As the investigation into Theo Silverton's death in Coronation Street continues, Gary Windass spirals when it seems attention could turn to him again. Kit Green had Gary down as a suspect after Todd Grimshaw's missing phone was found in a pawn shop with Brody Michaelis' fingerprints on it. When Brody explained that he found it in a skip outside the builder's yard, Kit questioned Gary, and despite his seemingly plausible explanation, Kit has remained suspicious of him. This was despite Summer Spellman awaiting trial for Theo's murder after she was arrested when the brooch found in Theo's flat was proven to be hers, among other damning evidence. However, with another huge twist in the case during tonight's episode of the ITV soap, attention could turn to Gary once more. It began with Carl Webster telling Tyrone Dobbs that he had been experiencing flashbacks of the night he was injured and knew it took place in the garage. Tyrone was disturbed by what he had been told, as well as knowing that he had seen Summer on the night of Theo's murder and could prove her innocence, saving her from trial and a possible prison sentence. Overwhelmed, he confessed all to Fizz Dobbs, revealing that he knew she wasn't guilty, that he had found Carl tampering with the brakes on Kevin Webster's car, and that he had accidentally knocked the car jack, causing the car to crush Carl. Tyrone admitted to filming the incident on his phone, to which Fizz demanded that he tell the police. Later, Tyrone met with Carl and showed him the footage, explaining that what Carl did was attempted murder and that he would be handing his phone into the police station in a bid to secure Summer's freedom. Gary, also present during the revelation, desperately tried to mask his rising panic, but with Summer set to be walking the cobbles once more, there are fewer suspects for the police to focus on. The rain hammered down on Weatherfield like a warning. Gary Windass sat alone in the builder's yard, staring at his laptop screen. His hands trembled as the latest news report flashed before him. The investigation into Theo Silverton's death has taken another dramatic turn. Gary slammed the laptop shut. He couldn't hear any more. For weeks, he'd convinced himself everything would be fine. The police had no proof. No witnesses. Nothing that could connect him to the night Theo died. Yet somehow, the walls were closing in. Every knock on the door made his heart race. Every passing police car felt like it was coming for him. And now there was another update. Another lead. Another reason for everyone to look in his direction. He rubbed his face and exhaled sharply. "Pull yourself together, Gary," he muttered. But he couldn't. Not anymore. Back at home, Maria Connor watched him carefully. Gary hadn't slept properly in days. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes. His temper was shorter than ever. Even Liam had noticed. "Dad okay?" Liam asked quietly. Maria forced a smile. "He's just stressed." But she wasn't convinced. Neither was Liam. That evening Gary barely touched his dinner. The silence around the table became unbearable. Finally Maria spoke. "What's going on?" Gary looked up. "Nothing." "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Pretend everything's fine." Gary pushed his plate away. "I said I'm fine." "No, you're not." The sharpness in her voice caught him off guard. Maria leaned forward. "You're barely sleeping. You're snapping at everyone. You're acting like you're carrying the weight of the world." Gary stood abruptly. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I'm going out." "Gary." But he was already gone. The Rover's return buzzed with conversation. Gary slipped inside and headed straight for the bar. A double whiskey appeared in front of him. Then another. And another. Across the room, familiar faces laughed and chatted. Normal lives. Normal problems. Gary envied them. Because every second of every day he felt trapped. His mind replayed that night over and over. The argument. The anger. The threats. Theo's face. The memories refused to leave him alone. Rough night? Gary looked up to find Sarah Platt standing beside him. He forced a smile. Something like that. Sarah frowned. You look terrible. Thanks. You know what I mean. Gary looked away. Sarah had known him long enough to spot when something was wrong. You want to talk? No. Gary. I said no. The harshness shocked even him. Sarah stepped back. Fine. As she walked away, guilt hit him instantly. But guilt was becoming a permanent part of his life. The next morning brought fresh chaos. A new witness had reportedly come forward. Word spread across the street within hours. Residents gathered outside Roy's Rolls discussing theories. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a suspect. And Gary heard every single word. Maybe it was someone close to him. I still think Gary knows more than he's saying. He threatened Theo plenty of times. Gary froze. The conversation wasn't meant for his ears. But the damage was done. People were talking. People were suspicious. People were connecting dots. His pulse raced. Suddenly he couldn't breathe. He turned and walked away before anyone noticed him listening. Later that day he found himself standing outside the police station. He didn't know why he'd come. Maybe because part of him wanted it all to end. The lies. The fear. The paranoia. Every day felt worse than the last. His phone buzzed. Maria. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again. And again. Finally he answered. What? Where are you? Busy. Gary, you're scaring me. Her voice cracked. That stopped him. For a moment he saw things clearly. Not the investigation. Not Theo. Not the rumors. Maria. Liam. The family he'd spent years trying to protect. The family he was now pushing away. I'll be home soon, he said quietly. But home offered little comfort. That evening another development emerged. Police had recovered additional evidence. Nobody knew exactly what. Only that the investigation was moving forward. Gary felt physically sick. He locked himself in the bathroom and stared at his reflection. The man looking back seemed unfamiliar. Exhausted. Broken. Haunted. He splashed cold water on his face. It didn't help. Nothing helped. The guilt. The fear. The uncertainty. It was eating him alive. Days passed. Gary became increasingly isolated. He stopped answering calls. Ignored messages. Avoided friends. Even Maria struggled to reach him. Then came the breaking point. A detective arrived at the builder's yard. The sight of the officer sent panic surging through Gary's body. Mr. Windass. Gary's mouth went dry. Yeah. We'd like to ask a few additional questions. The world seemed to tilt. Additional questions. Simple words. But they felt like a death sentence. He nodded silently. The interview lasted less than an hour. Yet by the time it ended, Gary felt shattered. Every question sounded like an accusation. Every glance felt loaded with suspicion. When he finally left the station, photographers were waiting outside. Cameras flashed. Voices shouted. Gary, are you a suspect? Did you kill Theo? Have police uncovered new evidence? Gary pushed through the crowd. His chest tightened. His vision blurred. For one terrifying moment he thought he might collapse. That night Maria found him sitting alone in the dark. No television. No music. Just silence. She sat beside him. Neither spoke. Minutes passed. Then Maria reached for his hand. Whatever's happening, she said softly, you don't have to face it alone. Gary stared ahead. Emotion welled inside him. The pressure. The fear. The endless pretending. It had become too much. Tears filled his eyes. Maria squeezed his hand. And finally, for the first time in weeks, Gary broke. Not with anger. Not with shouting. But with exhaustion. The kind that comes from carrying secrets too long. I don't know what to do anymore, he whispered. Maria's heart broke. Because this wasn't the Gary she knew. This wasn't the fighter who always found a way through. This was a man drowning. Outside, Weatherfield carried on as normal. Cars passed. Lights flickered. People laughed. Life continued. But inside the Windass household, everything had changed. The Theo investigation was no longer just a police case. It had become something far more dangerous. A force tearing Gary apart from the inside. And as new evidence continued to emerge, one question haunted him more than any other. How much longer could he survive before the truth, whatever it might be, finally destroyed him? The rain began again. Heavy. Relentless. Just like the storm gathering around Gary Windass. And deep down, he feared the worst was still yet to come. Meaning he could be in their sights once more. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Coronation Street.